the host didn't want him there. Why would you pay so much money to be able to be at a party where you weren't wanted to begin with? So that's my second question. And my third question is, what did Kamsa do wrong? The Talmud says that the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. Now, Kamsa was the friends, Bar Kamsa was the enemy. Bar Kamsa was invited instead of Kamsa. What did Kamsa do wrong? Kamsa didn't do anything. He wasn't even there. So why is he linked to the blame of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash? So again, three questions. First of all, what is the difference between Sinas Chinam and Gemilas Chasadim? Secondly, why was Bar Kamsa so motivated to get himself the ability to stay at this party? Why was he so embarrassed to leave? And thirdly, what did Kamsa himself do wrong? And I'd like to suggest, and partially the Ein Yaakov in his commentary on the Talmud plants the seed of this approach. He suggests that, you know what Kamsa did wrong? Kamsa was in the clique with the host of this party. Probably the last time that Kamsa made a party, he also invited only his close friend, the host, and left out Bar Kamsa. And let me explain. Bar Kamsa, I believe, represented not just a person who didn't want to be embarrassed. Bar Kamsa represented an ideology, a philosophy. I suggest that Bar Kamsa had the social awareness to realize that they weren't best friends. And he didn't like the host of the party any more than the host of the party liked him. So why did he want to be there? The reason I believe is because Bar Kamsa said that when we have a celebration, when we have a communal simcha, it's for the entire community to be there. Because I care about everyone in my community, even if they're not my good friends. Bar Kamsa said, we all should be here. And I believe that the difference between Sinas Chinam and Gemilas Chasadim is this, that Gemilas Chasadim, the people of the Second Temple period, they did tons of kindness for one another. They had friends, and they had charity, and they had chesed. However, they didn't care about the overall community. They didn't care about every single person in the community. They cared about the people who were within their own social group. And that was Sinas Chinam. That was what plagued the Jewish community during this time period, that they celebrated in small groups, but didn't feel a strong connection to the entire Jewish community. There's an extraordinary halacha, which says that Tana Rabbanan, the Talmud tells us, and this is quoted, this is the halacha, Mevatlin Talmud Torah lo tzas hameis ulachmasas kala, that we close up the yeshiva and we should stop the study of Torah whenever there's a time to bury someone who passed or celebrate with someone who's getting married. When is this the case? That's only if there aren't enough people already at the funeral procession. But if there are enough people, so then, they're covered and you don't need to go. And then the Gemara says, how many is enough people? How many people is enough people that you could say, I don't need to go, I'll continue studying and let the others accompany the funeral? One opinion, 12,000. One opinion, 13,000. One opinion, Shishim Ribo, 600,000, which is the number of Jews who were at Har Sinai when we got the Torah. And this is actually the opinion that we follow in the Shulchan Aruch. Im yesh samach ribo mevalan Talmud Torah lo tzas hameis. Im yesh samach ribo, if there are 10,000, if there are 600,000 people there, ein tzarich litbatel b'shvilo. You don't need to stop learning. They've got it covered. I mean, how many people in Jewish history have had 600,000 people at their funeral? Similarly, the Shulchan Aruch says that if a person dies, kol b'nei ha'ir asurim b'malacha. If someone dies, everyone in the city is not allowed to work, because any person who doesn't accompany a funeral procession, bar nidoihu, should be excommunicated, should be out of the community. And it's an extraordinary thing that that we demand so many people to be at these events, to be at a funeral, to be at a wedding. And I think the message is clear, that is trying to say that if someone in the Jewish community passed away, it's something which should affect every single Jew. It's not that there aren't enough people unless the entire nation is there. The entire nation cares if one Jew passes and needs to care about it enough to actually attend the funeral. And similarly, if someone gets married, it's not just a celebration for the person's friends, but it's a celebration for the entire Jewish community. We all need to care about each other's events, happy or sad, and participate in them. And this is, I think, what was going on in the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. Bar Kamsa was saying, we need all Jews to be there. I want you to come to my celebration, not because we're friends. We don't need to hang out. But I want you to be there because I want my simcha and I want my grief to be the concern of the entire nation, and the grief and the celebration of the entire nation is my concern. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be here and celebrate with you, even though we're not friends. And Kamsa said, and the host of this party had a different ideology. The host of this party said, this party is for me and my friends. Me and my boy, Kamsa, we want to celebrate it. We don't want Bar Kamsa to be here. And Hashem says that if this is our attitude, then we don't deserve the Beis HaMikdash. What's the relationship between this attitude and the Beis HaMikdash? And I believe the answer is that the Beis HaMikdash was the last time that we had one central place of worship. One central place. It's not convenient to have only one synagogue in the entire nation of Israel. I can only get there 3 times a year. The Jews would come to the Beis HaMikdash 3 times a year on the 3 holidays. But at least those 3 times, every single Jew was going to the exact same address, to the Beis HaMikdash. And they were in the city of Yerushalayim with all of the Jews of Israel. Yerushalayim, Habruya Ki'ir, Shechuvra La Yachtav. The Midrash says it's the city, it's called the city Shekol Yisrael Chaverim. It makes the entire nation into one nation, into one community, because we all have one place to go. And Hashem says, if you don't understand the purpose of the Beis HaMikdash, which is to create a sense of community which includes the entire nation, then you don't need to have my temple. The purpose of the Beis HaMikdash is to bring the entire community together. And you've undermined the purpose of the Beis HaMikdash. And therefore, you lose that very Beis HaMikdash. What do we get instead? Instead, we get what the Gemara says, based on the pasuk in Yechezkel, "Va'hei lahem lemikdash ma'at." Instead of having a Beis HaMikdash, you're going to get synagogues in all the communities. You're going to get the synagogue, but the synagogue and the house of study and the Beit Midrash, they're very different than the temple of the Beis HaMikdash. And that is that the synagogues were decentralized, and they actually promoted the idea of having your community and your friend group in one shul, and you don't like the people in the shul, you start your own shul and have your own shul where it's just your friends. And the shul, if you look at the laws of respect for the synagogue, they're actually fundamentally different than that of the temple. In the temple, the Harabayit, you can't go with shoes on. But in the Beit Knesset, you could go with shoes. And the reason is because the Beit Knesset is treated like one's own house. The synagogue is like one's own house. Just as one objects to a person using his house as a shortcut, you wouldn't really appreciate it if someone would walk through your front door, go through and go to the back door as a shortcut. So too, the shul shouldn't be used as a shortcut. You go through one door and out the other door. But people didn't mind spitting, which was obviously more common in time of the Talmud, or wearing shoes. I don't mind if you wear shoes in my house. So therefore, you can wear shoes in the Beit Knesset. The Beit HaMikdash is God's house and has its own set of laws, and therefore you can't wear shoes. And I think in this way, the Beit HaKnesset being portrayed as like your own house speaks to the fact that the Beit HaKnesset doesn't bring all the Jews together. It does not replicate the Beit HaMikdash in the sense that it brings the entire community together. It's actually more like your house, which is for just the people who are close to you, and not for the people who are distant from you in the Jewish community. So therefore, God says, if you don't realize the purpose of the Beit HaMikdash, which is to build the sense of community beyond the social groups, then you lose the Beit HaMikdash. You don't deserve it anymore, and it will be destroyed. Now, you might ask, what's the point of this? What's the point of God undermining his purpose? If he really wants the Jewish people to feel this sense of community and the sense of connection with all Jews, and he created a Beit HaMikdash to promote that sense of community, then why did he destroy it? And now we have no chance. All it gave us was the Beit HaKnesset, which is localized and makes it even more difficult. It's like a teacher whose student, let's say, refuses to take notes. And they use their pen, like in my generation, they use their pen to doodle, and they don't bother taking notes. And the teacher says, you need to take notes, and they don't. And then in this generation, they're using their computer, and they're not using it for note-taking. So the teacher says, forget it. You don't take notes. I'm taking away your pen. You don't deserve it. You're supposed. It's a privilege to have the pen. You're supposed to use it for note taking. If you don't use it for note taking, then I'm taking it away. And then, what do you expect to happen next? Obviously, the student isn't going to take notes. What have you actually accomplished? Why did Hashem destroy the Beit HaMikdash and take away every opportunity to rebuild that which we had failed at to begin with? I think the answer is that what Hashem is trying to tell us is that yes, the Beis HaMikdash is meant to build the sense of community, but it doesn't happen by just building a building. You can't just build an edifice and say, this is the central temple of all the Jews, and this is going to make us all friends and make us all care about each other. Because it's not how it works. What Hashem said is, if you don't use the Beis HaMikdash for the purpose that I had for it, then I will take it away, and you will have to choose to build that sense of community. Because you can have a community with one temple, you can have a community with 1,000 mini temples. But what you need in order to create a sense of community is that every person needs to make a choice that I want this, that I identify with the sadness and the celebration of every other Jew. I feel connected to all of them. It has to be a choice. And therefore he says, I'm taking away your pen, but if you care enough, you'll find a way to get this done. And you could do it even without the Beis HaMikdash. The Gemara says, famously, that anyone who does whoever works on Tisha B'Av, it doesn't participate in the mourning for Yerushalayim, you won't see the celebration. Shenemar, because it says it in Ishayahu, Simchu et Yerushalayim v'gilu ba kol aveha. Celebrate for Yerushalayim, all of those who love it. Sisu itam misos kol tablibla. All of those who mourn for her should come and celebrate with Yerushalayim when it's rebuilt. Mikan amru kol mitzabel al Yerushalayim zoche v'ro b'simchasa. Anyone who mourns will merit to see the celebration. Mishe'eno mitzabel, and someone who doesn't care enough to mourn, eino roe b'simchasa, doesn't see, will not merit to see the celebration. Most people understand this Gemara to say that the reward for good mourning is to be able to participate in the celebration. If we don't mourn, then we don't merit that reward of celebrating in the rebuilt Yerushalayim. But I'd like to read a second layer into this Gemara, which is that if you're thinking about it the way that we've been describing, that we're talking about sinas chinam, and we're talking about the importance of identifying as one large community with every Jew, and the failure of the generation of the Second Temple to have that sense of identification and that sense of community. That Bar Kamsa was the only one, but no one agreed with it, and no one lived it. And we understand that we can rebuild that even without the Beis Hamikdash. What he's saying is this: Kol hamitabel al Yerushalayim, Kol hamitabel al Yerushalayim. Whoever internalizes the purpose of the Beis Hamikdash could already celebrate its rebuilding, because we could achieve the goal of the Beis Hamikdash even before it gets here, and ensure that when it does come, we will already have rebuilt our Jewish community, our Ahavas Chinam, with each other even before it comes, and therefore we can achieve the part of the purpose of the Beis Hamikdash even before it gets here. And I think that this is something that we could think about as not only a historical flaw that occurred so long ago, but something which is very difficult and very important, and that we all realize the benefit of community, the strength of community, but to really rebuild it and strengthen it. It was a very hard year for community, but one of the things we saw during the initial lockdown, I would say, of the beginning of COVID, was that sometimes we lost our sense of community, but in so many ways we were able to connect with others even without being in one room. And now that we have the opportunities to be in the same room, to actually realize it and to build a much stronger connection with all the Jews in our community and Am Yisrael, to wish everyone a happy rebuilt Yerushalayim soon. And thank you for joining this year.